What do you do when you're faced with a problem that you just can't overcome? A challenge that seems insurmountable? Well, simple. You pull out your Glock 19 and light up whatever dares to stand in your way. You make the big GW proud and do it for the red, white, and blue, baby. Or at least that's what most people think your standard American would do. And while that may or may not be true, I can guarantee that it would be the first reaction of everyone's favorite white-haired half-breed, Dante. Now, Dante even says himself that he tends to shoot things first and think about the consequences later. And I'm not sure if that's the best policy to live by, but man does it sound patriotic to me. The entire Devil May Cry anime really feels like a non-American's fever dream of what the United States is like, which kind of makes sense since it's based on a mix of Western cultures made by a Japanese company and adapted by a South Korean studio, which also might mean that it doesn't technically count as an anime, but that's besides the point. Devil May Cry is one of the only representations of my gun-loving, whiskey-sipping culture in the anime medium, and honestly, I think that's really cool. Not only does the show take place in a Western setting, but it leans into Western stereotypes that anime rarely gets the chance to explore. And a perfect example of this is Vice President Baines. He is the embodiment of a corrupt American politician, and that's something I've never really seen in an anime. He controls everything from the shadows and uses religion as a disguise to justify his actions, which are quite honestly satanic. He orders his soldiers to kill innocent demon families who couldn't even hurt anyone if they wanted to. And he starts a completely unnecessary war that causes unimaginable agony and death, all in the name of a righteous God. But the truth is, no matter how tightly he clutches that Bible, he's far closer to the Antichrist than the Heavenly Father. He doesn't love thy neighbor, he doesn't show mercy, he doesn't put others first, he doesn't even try. In reality, he's just using people and forcing them to become tools in his own blasphemous plan. But that's what makes him so powerful and compelling, because you have to hate him. Everything he says is a lie or a contradiction, but he believes every word of it, and that's terrifying. They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and that's literally what happens here. He justifies every sin through religion, twisting faith to fit his own image. It's blasphemous and completely opposite of what the Bible teaches, but it gives him the resolve to move forward regardless, even if that means unleashing hell onto his own country. And while I don't think that's the most positive part of American culture, I still loved seeing it portrayed in an anime, because it hit home a little. I've never walked through a bamboo forest or trained under a waterfall, but I have known people who misuse religion to prop up a righteous facade and profit off of people's blind belief. So when I saw a character like the Vice President doing all that in the most American way possible, I have to say, I was incredibly entertained. And now that we've covered the dark side of American culture in Devil May Cry, let's talk about the good, or at least the morally gray, which brings us to Dante himself. Now, Dante is one of the most American characters I've ever seen. He's literally just a cowboy born in the wrong century and without the accent. He has no real motivation or greater purpose at the beginning of the story. He's just going around with his 2 pistols, destroying whatever unfortunate demon wanders into his path. And everything about him is very American, from his obsession with rock to his red leather jacket and motorcycle. Even his absolute hatred for authority is a very American quality. And Dante himself, especially at the beginning of the story, is the perfect example of a man who embodies freedom. However, it's not that righteous, I will bring freedom to all kind of vibe that characters like Luffy and Thorfinn have. It's a much more selfish, shallow, and realistic interpretation on what it means to be free. Because they say that a man with nothing left to lose is one that is free to do anything. And that is exactly what Dante is. He has no family, he has no real friends. The only person he really relies on is Enzo, and the only reason for that is because he knows that Enzo will always sell him out for money, which makes him the most trustworthy person in Dante's life, which is really sad. Since Dante has no responsibilities or people to look out for, yes, it means he's free, but it also means his life is pretty meaningless. His situation reminds me a lot of Trevor Belmont at the beginning of the Castlevania Netflix adaptation, But unlike Trevor, instead of pitying himself or giving up on life, Dante decides that he's gonna have a good time and make the most out of his unfortunate situation. And that's really cool. Let's be honest, he's not the deepest or most philosophical protagonist. In fact, he's kind of an idiot. He would have died multiple times in the first 2 episodes if it weren't for his demonic powers. And I think that's part of why a lot of longtime Devil May Cry fans were disappointed. They felt the anime didn't flesh him out enough. And while I get that, I don't think that was ever the point, at least of the anime adaptation. To me, Dante was a character that had every right to hate the world and become a bad person, but instead he decides to just have fun. And that single word sums up his character and the whole show. No matter what, through the good, the bad, the highs and the lows, he's just having fun. And I can't think of another character in anime who smiles in the middle of fights as much as Dante. And it's not just when he's winning either. There are countless times in the show where Dante is just getting rocked and having a great time regardless. And sure, there's no deep foreshadowing or mind-bending plot twist, and Dante's character arc isn't going to make you change your perspective on life or become a better person. But it does show you that everything is in your hands. And no matter how hard life kicks you down, you can always choose how you react to it. But with that all being said, I can't sit here and pretend the anime's perfect, because there is one fatal flaw in the adaptation, and that's Lady. Staying true to our American symbolism, Lady is very much the quintessential Western woman who defies gender roles and societal expectations. And I fully appreciate that. The problem isn't what she represents, it's how she represents it. To me, Lady just isn't a very likable character. Whether it's to make up for her own shortcomings or to motivate the people around her, she always seems wildly full of herself, even though she doesn't really have any reason to be. Like the scene where she captures Dante for the first time. Dante had already fought a legion of military soldiers, so of course he was tired and he had no interest in killing Lady. If he really wanted, he had multiple opportunities to put an end to her right then and there, but he has enough mercy not to. And not only that, he doesn't even take her serious for a majority of the encounter, which is the only reason that Lady is able to hit him with an anti-demon bullet that Dante didn't even know would affect him. And so when a multitude of lucky circumstances and Dante's own foolishness lead to Lady capturing him, her first reaction isn't to respect Dante or to appreciate her own fortune. Instead, she goes back to her team all cocky, saying that of course she caught that idiot and how she's the military's secret weapon. And all of that is one thing. But the worst part of Lady's character is how much the show expects us to care about her. When she nearly dies to the White Rabbit or almost gets caught by the higher level demons, it's clear that this is supposed to be an emotional and high stakes moment. But the entire time, no matter how much music they played or slowed the scene down, I couldn't help but think, why am I not watching Dante right now? And that really does suck. Because from everything I've seen online, apparently Lady is supposed to be a really cool and likable character that helps balance out Dante's unseriousness. And as much as I wish that's what the anime showed us, it just wasn't. But despite that, I still had a great time watching Devil May Cry. I loved seeing the rest of the world's take on my own culture in my favorite medium. And I hope that in the future there will continue to be more anime that represent the red, white, and blue.